Okay, so hello and welcome back to another Unity tutorial. In this one I'm going to be doing part 2 of creating Lifeline from Apex Legends. This video will be more focused on her ultimate. I know I haven't finished the heal drone yet. I'm going to do a little bit more on that this video, but I'll probably do the rest of that in a separate one, because for that other video I'll need to do the health system. I'll need to do some awkward workaround with a line renderer to allow us to have multiple lines if there's, multiple people in the range of the healing, and so on. So I'm going to do the majority of that in its own video, maybe part 3 or 4, depends how long this takes. But this video will tweak the ability system to allow conditional casts. So normally when we do an ability, it will just cast it right away. But for example, you might have other scenarios beforehand. So for Lifeline's ultimate, it needs to be able to be aimed at the ground only. So first of all, I need to do like a Raycast off check whether the thing I hit, if I hit anything, is the ground, and only then do we cast the ability and put it on cooldown. So we'll do some tweaking with that, and we'll make it by the end of this video that we have a maybe a big capsule or something when we've used the ability comes flying down from the sky, lands, and then stays there. And then we can, like in a future video, or if you want to on your own, go into Blender and make some kind of like dropship supply thing and make it open up and drop some items. But that's for you to add. I'm just showing the system for the ability here, so we'll get into that in a minute. Don't want to waste much time. So before that, I want to thank my patrons. So special thanks to Michael, Remy Baldwin, and Phil Baum for their donations this month on Patreon. If anyone else is able to help support the channel, then the link is in the description below. You get access to these project files and all that good stuff. But anyway, let's just get into it. So what do we currently have for Lifeline? We have it so that when we press Q, her drone flies out, and there are some different things that can change with this, like when you push into it, or when this cube goes onto it, it kind of floats around a bit, which looks alright, but it gets a bit knocked. The actual visuals of how it looks, I could just quite simply go to the prefab for it, heal drone, remove the... We'll go into the hover code and just remove the balance speed. This like balance thing here, just get rid of that. And then I'm going to go back and actually just tell the rigid body on when it hits stuff not to rotate on the X. Sorry, I want the X to stay the same. Oh, this is tilted a bit weirdly. I'm on. Let's make this -90. I don't know. Oh, it's compiling the script. That's why it's going a bit weird. Alright, -90. Exactly, so it's flat. That's exactly flat, right? Yep. Cool. So we don't need to rotate on the X. The Y is fine. And then we don't really want it to go on the Z. Actually, no, if we just freeze the X, it's fine. Just leave it as is. So now if I use it and it gets hit, it shouldn't do any weird like wobbling. I thought that would look alright at the start. But we have the good old problem with the Raycast getting so close to the object that it just goes flying into the air. I mean, it does hover well. I should probably just freeze all axes on the object. That would just make life so much easier. I don't know why I didn't just do that anyway. So now when I throw it, it will just go like this. Yeah, it still goes really high up though because of the Raycast. So I should probably add a max force to it. Like if I go to the heal drone code for the hovering, hover above ground. When I do this here, I need to probably clamp it at like the have like a float for the max force. And then just to make sure that this value here, whatever comes out of this, is mathf.clamp between. So I'm clamping the value, which is this, between 0 and max force, like so. So if I set this max force to something obviously bigger than the like normal force that we have, which is 4. So if I set it to like 10, I don't know if that's going to be like still ridiculously high. I don't think it should be. Let's have a look though. So if I go and put that there. See, I could probably increase it even more, to be honest. Maybe like 40. Like fade out and just throw another one. I don't think we're really going to get many problems with that, actually. Yeah, even then it's not too bad. Yeah, I kind of like that, actually. It's alright. So I'm going to leave that as it is. Now let's get on to the Ultima that I was on about. Just obviously made some tweaks there to make it a bit nicer. So we want an ability for Lifeline. So we actually need to go write a new ability script. So it's kind of generic. It's just like spawn at Raycast. Because in reality that's what it is. I'm just wondering if that's generic, where's the launch game object? That's an ability. Let's go shove that in the abilities folder. Okay, so the one thing we want to change with this, actually it needs to go in here too. We need to change the base ability script, because currently what it does is, if we go to it, let's just, we got it here. When we cast an ability, we say, make sure it's off cooldown, and if it is off cooldown, then we cast it, and so on. But the problem with that is, we're just casting it regardless of any conditions, as long as it's off cooldown. We, for some abilities, might want to do a check before that. So in reality, we should have a public, we shouldn't make it abstract, because we don't want our child classes to have to implement it, we just want them to be able to. So we'll say public virtual void, or is it going to be a void? I guess it's going to be a bool, and we'll call the bool, what should we call it? Like validate cast, which is essentially going to validate whether we can do it or not, and that's going to return a bool. So by default, we're just going to say return true. So if the children classes, the child classes, you can just write it like this. If they don't implement this, if they don't overwrite it, then it's gonna work anyway. So we'll just say if not validate cast, return. So essentially, if we can't do the validation, then don't cast the ability. Cool. And then that should be good to go. If I remember correctly, when I do a cast in the child abilities, you can, for example, on Genji's Dash, I've used coroutines somewhere. Yeah, okay, and for the climb. I mean, that's the movement controller, but it still applies. So now we go to the new generic ability thing, which is just going to be spawn at a Raycast. Alright, so that's namespace, creating characters.abilities. And what is this? Well, it's obviously an ability, not a mono behavior, which technically it also then derives from mono behavior. So what does a ability need? It needs a cast method. We're also going to have a public override validate cast. Now, I'd rather put that above the cast so that we, in terms of reading it, you read, you validate, then you cast. Now, we don't care about the base. We want to return based on a Raycast. Now, what is our Raycast going to do? Well, we want this Raycast to have a range, so private float range, and it's going to have maybe a layer mask for what we consider to be like valid terrain, so private layer mask, and we'll set those in the inspector. So what do we want to do for this validate cast? Well, we want to say Raycast. Actually, we don't really need to do a Raycast hit. We just need to say if physics.raycast. Let's just write the main bit of the code. So we're going to raycast from our current position. I mean, actually, then again, it's actually going to do it from the camera's position. So if we have an ability like this, we should cache the main camera. So private camera main camera transform, because there's no point saving camera when you save transform. And on the awake, we will say main camera transform equals camera.main.transform. So we've got reference to that. Well, let me just make sure in the base class we don't have an awake. No, we don't. Okay, good. Cool. So we want to raycast from the main camera transform dot position. And what direction? Well, in its forward direction. So main camera transform dot forward. And then the layer mask is layer mask. And then you can also pass in, is that it actually? No, the distance, which is range. Now let me just make sure all the parameters are correct, because I always get something wrong here. I feel like the range should come before the layer mask. Nah, direction, distance, layer mask. Am I missing something here? There's some problem going on with brackets here. Oh, that's because I've not said like if. So, I mean, in reality, we just want to return this, don't we? Because this is going to be true if it does hit something with this layer mask in this range. Whereas if it doesn't, then it's going to return false. So actually, that validate cast thing is good for this. I guess having it on one line is a bit hard to read, so let's just split up all the variables so it's nicer to read. So there we go. That's our thing. We're going to go from the camera's position in the camera's forward direction, the range we specify with the layer mask we specify. So that's going to return true or false, and if it returns true, so we hit the ground and we're in range and so on, then we cast. So I'm just going to say, like, what, instantiate our current position. Oh wait, no, the object is going to be like, I don't know, game object dot create primitive cube. This is just a placeholder, don't worry, I'm going to change this in a second. At our position with our rotation. Why not? That's just what we're going to do. So let's see what happens now. If we go to here, just make sure the floor has a layer of, and then maybe add a layer, call it like ground. And I'm also quickly going to nip to the physics settings before I forget. And just get rid of all of the ones that aren't implemented by us, because I don't care about all these default ones, like UI or water or post-processing. Player should collide with the ground, and so should the projectiles, the ground, and so on. And the player with the player. That should be all good. So just make sure the ground now has the layer of ground, or anything you want to be able to summon the like supply drop onto. That's on player. Yeah, it's fine. Cool. Let's add the ability now. So we want to add an ability, which is the spawn at Raycast ability. So I'll just call it like supply drop. I can't remember what it's called. Spawns a supply drop, or calls in a supply drop from the sky, like so. Ability cooldown is going to be pretty long, but just for the sake of testing, I'll put it on like a 5-second cooldown. Ability key, it's Q, is it? I forget actually, I've not played in a long time. Pretty sure it's Q. On ability cast, let's just do that, we don't really need that. The range, so the Raycast range, we might have to fiddle with this. I'm just going to say 10, I don't know, that actually 10 units is pretty big, isn't it? Well, let's say we're here, how far away do you want to be? So I'd say we want to be like, so it's -3 to... Now 5's a good idea, yeah, 5 maybe. What have I put the range as? 10, I'll go for like 7. So the this layer mask is essentially, I keep saying the word essentially, is what we're allowed to collide with. So the ground is the only thing this Raycast is actually going to like care about. So what should happen now if I press play, if I press Q, we created a cube at our position with our rotation. Oh wait, why did I say Q? It's not Q. You know what? I'm determined to get this right. How can I forget the actual ability button for abilities. Anyway, I shouldn't be too fussed. Let's just continue with what we're doing. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and just change that from being the same one as the... Yeah, I honestly forget what it is. Maybe the heal drone isn't Q, maybe it's like E or something. Yeah, people correct me in the comments. I've not played the game in ages, I honestly forget. I played too many games with different controls. There's Overwatch where ultimate's Q, so I don't think it is Q, but you get the point. If I press Q, you saw it spawned a cube where I was. Now it also spawned one where I aimed at, which... Oh no, it didn't. Wait, what was that about? That's interesting. So if I like press Q up here and look up here, nothing's happening, there's no cube spawning on me. As soon as I look at the ground in a valid place, it'll spawn the cube on me. Now I actually don't know what is up with that one. Let's just not do the create primitive because it's a bit silly. So now we want to actually spawn the drop at the position where we raycasted to. So what we could actually do here is when we do the validate raycast, we can either do another raycast to get the actual data from it, or we could store the data in a class. I feel like even though it would be doing two raycasts in the same frame, it would only be when you ultimate, so in reality it's not that bad. Let's just say raycast hit, so that's the hit data, and then we want to do a physics.raycast, but then we've got a out hit. Let me make sure I've put that parameter in the right place. I think I have. Yep. So after we do this raycast, we know it's going to be fine because we've just done it in the same frame and it's all fine. I mean, you could also have an if here just to be extra safe, but I'm fine with that. Then down here, once we've got this, we've got our hit data. So we'll say hit dot point. That's where we hit the ground. So we want to spawn, we'll say instantiate, and then like object to spawn. We're going to spawn it at dot point with the what do we want to do with the rotation? Just quaternion.identity. So up here, serialized field, private game object, object to spawn. We're going to spawn this object at the position. Now, you might think, well, we don't want to spawn the loot drop like on the ground. So what we actually want to do is we want to quickly create a capsule. Maybe say the capsule is going to be the loot drop. So it's going to be bigger than the player. Let's just say this is it, right? It's going to be like 2.5 scale. And go put it at like 2.5 off the ground. Doesn't really matter. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to make an animation for this where it's... So let's go put the animator on it. Or actually, no. We should put the animator on the base object, yes, but we should only move the visuals for the object in reality. So this is going to be supply drop. Then we have an empty game object under it, which should actually be that way around, really. So let's go reset that and then put that to 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. The reason we're doing this is so that we don't want to actually like move the parent object. That should stay wherever we raycasted to. So let's say we raycast to 0, 0, 0. Then we want the supply drop to end up being at 2.5. This is where we would want it to end up landing. So if we go and say, yeah, supply drop, and call this supply drop body, I don't know. We want to add an animator, so animator, go create a animations folder. I'm no good with animations, so I'll just do my best. Well, it's not going to be my best at all. It's fine though. Animation controller, supply drop. I would usually go with like controller underscore supply drop. And then it only needs a one animation, at least for now, so animation underscore supply drop underscore fall. I'm going to call it fall because it's falling out of the sky. Doesn't have loop time because it's just a one-time animation. Drag it in. So as soon as we start, we're going to do that, and then once we're done, we just kind of wait there. I mean, what we can actually do is I'm going to create an empty state with no nothing in it. I'm just going to call it empty. And once we've done, we go to here. So we do the full animation, then we just go to empty. And what empty will do is it'll set it to whatever the item default is, all the default things. So this is what we want it to be when it's done. If we go to the animator again, this happens, has an exit time of 1, no transition, it just gets there. And that we don't need any conditions because it just happens when this animation's finished. So the last job to do is just animate it. So let's have a shot. So go to the supply drop and set the animator controller. Then our animation is here. So we're going to pretend essentially that this is where it's going to land if we used it here. So we want to say record, and let's just get the current supply drop body.transform.position. And this is where it is currently. That's where I want it to be at the end of the animation. So let's go drag this to like however many seconds I want it to take. So let's just say 4 seconds for now. It's going to be really quick. Maybe 6 seconds. So that's where it ends. But where does it want to be right at the start? Well, we want it to be somewhere up in the sky, right? Up here. Now, let's say we could even put this at like 2 seconds. And then what we could do is we could take it even further up, go to about 2.5 seconds, and then click here and you get all the keyframes that you've been messing around with. So wait, this is supply drop position. Now note, I don't want to affect the supply drop's position, only the supply drop body's position, so keep that in mind, otherwise you might get some weird effects. So at the end this is 2.5, at the start it might be like, I don't know, 50 units in the sky. You probably want it higher than that, but let's say that's fine. Now if we do go down to about 2 seconds and get the X, we can then tell the body to perhaps be at the start a bit over to the side. So what happens is it comes down, but maybe we want the rotation to be like this. So it comes in, then the rotation's like this. Maybe by this point it's actually flat. So it's coming in and it's coming down. I mean, you might even want it to, by this point it could be getting closer to the end, so then here could be up here. Alright, I think I'm happy with that. Might want to just scale it out a bit, so the end of 6 seconds could be 11 seconds, and then this could happen around 7 seconds. It's up to you to tweak the thing. Point is, it's going to fly in, it's going to come down, it's going to come down, then it's going to go, and it should land there. So let's go test it. Turn that off, turn off the preview, and just make this supply drop a prefab. So if we go to prefabs, supply drop, and we get rid of it, go to Lifeline, the game object to spawn is the supply drop, assets, sorry, supply drop. Let's go see what happens. So if I press Q here, if you look up in the sky, the supply drop's there, and it's coming down, and it's coming down, and it's coming down right to the point where I clicked on the ground, and then it stops on the ground, and here it is, and then we can do stuff with it. Obviously, I'm put out my heal thing, and then obviously now I can go over here. If I click on the wall, nothing's going to spawn in because I can't aim there. As soon as I click to aim there, you notice how another one spawns in. I know, the animation could go through like a wall or something, and I've not gone into like in-depth checking for that kind of stuff, but I don't think that really matters for now. You guys can fiddle around with that, maybe do some other kind of checks to see if the area is clear or if you could do the animation, but I like the idea. You can tweak the animation to make it better, but I think it's pretty cool. And then, yeah, as I said, you could take this further and make your supply drop object contain items to drop for your player. I'm probably not going to bother doing that, but I might in like the second or third video. Well, this is the second. I might do it in the third or fourth video if I feel any need to. But I hope you like this. Now keep in mind, yeah, if you did have a slanted terrain, we can just try this for the sake of it. If I just tilt this up, just to prove a point. If I want to use it there, wherever I was looking, it would really help with a crosshair. It should still like spawn at the correct height to go down to the bit where I said. Now obviously, yeah, it's on a slant, but it stops right on the point. Basically wherever the object base is will be where I did the raycast to. So I think it works pretty well. I mean, you shouldn't really have ground that's this slanted, and if you do, I think the game actually checks when you do the raycast to see if the angle of the ground is steeper or not. So as I said, yeah, you could do more checks there. But I hope you like this video. We'll probably move back now to the heal drone in the next video. We'll focus on that and get the actual healing mechanic working. If you're enjoying these videos, obviously leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean a lot. Help me on Patreon if you can. Discord server link is in the description below. Give comments of ideas of what you want for these videos, any feedback. Apart from that, thanks for watching and goodbye.